Hey,
Hey, hi. Sorry about that. How are you?
good. How are you? Good to
I'm
see
good. Good to see you too.
you. So I added Morbid Anatomy. I'm just waiting for her to join. I'm going to re-add just in case she didn't get the invite for some reason.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Morbid Anatomy is now invited.
Wonderful. So we forgot to work out that little glitch.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's either very consistent to be on Instagram Live or it's just something that you don't know what it is. So sometimes smooth,
We,
sometimes kind of, you
we're,
know.
we're making it work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the fun thing about the Instagram lives is that they are what they are. You know, it's really just like a conversation, a candid conversation that you can have. So I don't feel like there's a lot of expectation where if you're doing like a podcast or a formal author talk or as far as like, you know what I mean? Like these are meant to be a little less formal and they're meant to be a little more candid. So there's never really any pressure with the glitches, but oh, I wonder why she's still not able to.
Let me check. Well, let me see if she, no.
Okay, well, I added her again, but I know that she was going to do the intro of why we were here, but you know what? Things happen and we have to kind of roll with it, don't we?
Yeah,
Um,
she can always say something when she joins.
yes, so she can do that, but I'll just kind of explain what we're doing here so that everybody that's already here knows why we're here. And hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Seeley, and every month I like to spotlight a book and do an author chat about the book. This month, we are spotlighting Memento Mori, which is a book that is written by Joanna Ebenstein, who is joining us today. There are so many wonderful things I could say about this book. I did read it when it first came out, and I read it appropriately, chapter by chapter, and we'll get more into that later. But it's just a book that I tell everybody that I work with in the death space about. It's a book that I often highlight when I'm in person at events. I just think it's a really important book to read because it's a way to contemplate our mortality, and there's so many fun practices in it as well. But so every month we meet and we have a conversation, and this month the book is Memento Mori, and our author is Joanna Ebenstein. Joanna, I'm going to hand the floor over to you and let you explain a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, and just to let you know, also Nicole did text me and say she didn't get the invite. So if you want to try one more time, maybe. But hello, everyone. My name is Joanna Ebenstein. I'm the founder and creative director of Morbid Anatomy, and it's a real honor to be here in general, but especially Lauren. It means so much to me to hear someone who's actually in the hi Nicole, working in the death space, who is getting something out of it. Because I really wanted this to be a useful book above everything else, like a readable, fun was another word I was very happy to hear you use, and useful book. And I feel like, people like us, and maybe we should have Nicole introduce herself too before we say what us is, but maybe have done some of that work and maybe have found a way where we might think there might be something positive to death, but so many people haven't. And so when I was writing this book, I was really thinking of those people, like smart, curious people that maybe had never even considered there might be anything useful or interesting or worthwhile in death.
Yeah, and I think like I said, there's so much I could say about the book, but especially as somebody who facilitates an in-person book club as well at Morbid Anatomy,
Yeah.
people that come in that have never had those conversations before. They've never been to a death book meetup. They've never played the death deck. They've never had conversations about death in a room full of strangers. And I think that your book is a really great segue to have those conversations or to contemplate that on their own time, and is often something that I point out in the library as well. Oh, it's your first time. Welcome. Thank you for having, the capacity to speak about your mortality or listen to other people speak about their mortality or even just contemplate your mortality. So, a good place to start is your book, because not only are there different ways and perspectives to look at, mortality, but there's also again, those really fun exercises and homework and journal prompts that are in there. So before I talk too much, I'm going to hand the floor over to Nicole, who's made it in.
Hi
Hello.
guys, thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Nicole, the head of content and communications at Morbid Anatomy, and we are joining Lauren Seeley, creative death doula and Morbid Anatomy founder Joanna Ebenstein, for her online once a month book talk, where we discuss different topics around death, mortality, aging, esoterica, and more. And this month we will be talking about Memento Mori, Joanna's book, featured in our library, just like Lauren was mentioning, The Art of Contemplating Death to Live a Better Life. So before I hand this off to you, Lauren, just so you guys can get into it more, I did want to mention that we are having our next in-person Silent Book Club of Death on June 14th at 12:30 p.m. in the Morbid Anatomy Library. So definitely be sure to join us. You can check us out on the website to sign up for the Silent Book Club of Death and all of our other classes, events, trips, shop, and more.
And what's
So,
that website, Nicole?
www.morbidanatomy.org. You guys can join
Perfect.
us there.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just for those of you who might not know the library, it's based in Brooklyn, New York. So if you're in the New York area, you're in luck.
Yes. Yeah, definitely come visit us. We would love to have you, especially for the Silent Book Club of Death. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah.
Yes, please join us. I mean, even if you haven't ever had a discussion about your mortality, this is the place to do it. So, book club is a safe space where you can talk about your mortality or you cannot talk about it. You can just observe. There's no obligation to join. You can just be present. And I think that that's enough. So, thank you, Nicole. And I look forward to the next meeting that we get to have together. Um,
Yes.
Joanna, I do have some questions written
Bring
down,
it
but
on.
I want to go through some of them, but I do want to freestyle, of course, too. The first one is always kind of like, I want to know how you landed here. So you've written so many wonderful books about death and the body and the grave and practices, and so much of your work is relative to, I feel like, leading up to this book that you wrote, and it's very different. And I'm wondering, when on your journey did you just decide it's time to write this book?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's actually a very specific story. So, as you were saying, Lauren, most of my books are art books. This is the only book that has one image of Santa Muerta. Everything else is words. That was brand new for me. I tend to write more like a curator and a lover of beautiful things and interesting things. But I was invited, Morbid Anatomy had a museum back from 2012 to 2016. Did you ever come, Lauren? You did? Okay, great. So it was crazy. We had a 3-floor building, black building in Brooklyn that had changing exhibits and a library and a great gift shop and a cafe. And I was invited at that time only because I ran a museum, to give a TEDx talk. This was not a deathy TEDx event. This was like a normal TEDx event. And to give you a sense of how normal it was, I went on after first there was like a kind of a promotional speaker, and then there was a stand-up comic. So people were not there because they love death. And what was really amazing about that experience is the excellent team that TEDx provided helped me, craft something that created an entry into this material for people that weren't already like us, essentially. Like I'd been really, Morbid Anatomy had been aimed at myself and people like me who were, people that were always into this stuff, or, were thought of as strange for loving it their whole lives. But this was not those people. And there were 650 people in the audience, and they paid a lot of money for this ticket. And I remember when I gave my talk, looking at the audience afterwards and just being like, okay, how did that go down? And everyone was on board. People were smiling, clapping, and I was like, okay. And that was a moment when suddenly I realized that there's a way I kind of think of it as a Trojan horse, to Trojan horse this material into a world that doesn't think they're interested. But it is interesting if you just get past people's preconceptions. And so that's when I think the idea was hatched, to try to find some vehicle to bring this to the people that I think really needed it. And so the person I had in my mind was my mom. I don't know if my mom's watching this, but if you are, it was for you, Mom. My mom is a very smart woman. She's college educated. She's not super intellectual, and she's not discriminating in what she takes in. You know, she reads a lot of People magazine. She and watches Fox News and watches other things too. But she's just kind of a general consumer. But she's a curious person, and so I thought, how would I write this? How would I present this material in a way to get my mom interested in it? Someone who's open-minded enough to think there might be any possibility of finding something positive there. Because if you don't think that, you're not going to pick this book up, right? So it's somewhat of a self-selecting audience, but people who are not necessarily super cerebral, super educated, but are curious. And so that's really who this book was for. And of course, I also wanted it to be useful to our community and to death doulas in particular. Oh, thank you, Nicole.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. But I really wanted it to be useful. And as you've said the word fun several times in your questions, and I'm so happy because I think that was my goal too, is to make this fun and accessible and joyous. And of course, that's what we all know, right? As being people who contemplate death, that the seemingly paradoxical thing is that's how you end up having the most joyous life you can, is by contemplating death. And that's really what this book is about, both in its content, talking about different times and places people have used death as a way to live better lives. And then each chapter based on a book that was really useful to me. Did you guys ever do the book The Artist's Way, Nicole and Lauren? Yeah, Nicole did. Lauren?
I know a lot of people have, but I
Okay.
did not. I probably should at some point, right?
Uh,
Because everybody.
no
It's
shoulds.
awesome.
It is
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm doing it right now on chapter 4. Highly recommend. And then, yeah, you would say this is like the artist's way, but around death or mortality,
Yes.
right? I
That's how
love
I
that.
pitched it, was Artist's Way of Death, you know, and I pitched it to a number. I had an agent, so she pitched it to a number of different publishers, but the one who ended up really getting it was, of course, the publisher of The Artist's Way. And so it's the same publisher, which was my dream. That was always my dream, is this could really be part of that world, you know, and get to that audience. Um, so that's how I came to write the book. And then also the other big component is of course COVID. And so when COVID started, I had a class on the back burner that a friend of mine had asked me to pitch. He ran a program at NYU, and he asked me to pitch it as part of the program he ran. But they had a lot of changes they wanted to make that weren't really in my wheelhouse. You know, they wanted it to be more theory based and bring in Marxism. And I was just like, that's just not interested in that. It's not who I am. And I kind of forgot about it. And when COVID happened, my then business partner, Leticia, she's like, now is the time, do that class, do it online. And I was like, you're right. And so I started offering the class online, and that working with people for probably for 4 years with that class, sometimes twice a week, for all of lockdown and beyond, was really transformative for me. Well, first of all, it forced me to put all of this information I've been thinking about for the past 20 years into this structure that then was pretty easy to expand into the book. And then so many of the exercises in there are exercises I gave to the students or exercises I learned from the students. I learned so much from the students. They had such great ideas and great projects. And so the book is really the child of those two things, I would say.
I love, I, I love that story.
Um,
I love that you wrote it for your mom in mind, like thinking of a specific person. That's such a great idea too, is to like think of who your audience is, like very, very narrowed down to one person.
Yes. That
Typically,
is my advice to all communications people. Like when I was describing our very first events, I had someone in the community in mind, and I always wrote it for her. And I thought, and her name is Christine Colby. If you're there, Christine Colby, I thought, how do I make this interesting to Christine Colby? You know, someone who is super curious and interested and smart, maybe doesn't know as much as I do about certain of these subjects. So how do you make it accessible and interesting? So that is my biggest advice if you want to be a communicator. Think of a person and write to them.
I love that. And I love that um, I love that you wrote this as like a way to have other people outside of the death space contemplate their mortality. And, you know, of course, as a creative in the death space, I really appreciate the way that you put this book together and all the exercises. And I mean, I just think it's really fun because it's kind of it's getting you to contemplate, you know, specific like aspects of your mortality, but then you're taken you're continuing to do that work, but you're doing it in a way that you're enjoying the work that you're doing because you're journaling, you're doing different projects. I don't know how much you want to get into what's in the book without spoiling it, so I'm trying not to, but I just really love how each chapter has different exercises and journaling, and it just really gets you to like be mindful right after you've taken in that content about that specific, targeted,
Yeah.
mortality contemplation. And so um, I'm wondering, because you wrote this book and it's for other people to kind of, think about death. Um, is there any sort of way that you've had the opportunity to contemplate your mortality that stands out, like a story, even if it's one you've told a million times or even if it's one you've never told before? Is there a way that you've had that kind of like aha moment while doing something that was creative, where you were
Mm,
thinking about death and not necessarily meaning to, but it maybe just happened as an exercise, because you travel a lot and you see lots of,
yeah.
you know and so I'm
Yeah.
curious if you've had that moment. I'm sure you have.
Well, I've had lots of moments. I don't know if it's through creativity. I would say creativity really helps me integrate it. But the moments came in other ways. And I talk about a bunch of them in the book because I also wanted it to be really relatable. Like when I was young, when I was like an adolescent, I got really scared of flying, like really scared. And I still am pretty afraid of flying. But when I was like 13 through 15, like when I was waiting in line, I would look at the people standing in line and I would imagine the plane plummeting and how they would be. It's like intrusive thoughts, essentially. And so every time I got on the plane, I would do this. Now I know I didn't have the word memento mori then. I was too young. I would do a memento mori. I would close my eyes and say, okay, if I die on this flight, how would I have lived my life differently? And because I've been doing that from the time I was 13, and actually I said I stopped at 15, but that's not true. I still do it. But that's the kind of practice that I encourage in the book. So I guess it is creative in a sense, but it was like a kind of like a prayer, I guess, but also like using, as I'm trying to guide people and doing in the book, using our awareness of our finitude as a way to help clarify what their true values are and what they want to do with their time on earth. So if I died in that plane crash, I wouldn't have regrets. And I will say that's where I'm at now because I've been doing that for so long. I made a lot of changes in my life. I've moved out of the country. I've um, I'm doing something I love that doesn't make a lot of money, don't have a lot of savings. But if I died tomorrow, I would feel okay about that. And that's, to me, what the goal of this work is about. But then creativity, art, writing, communications is such an important way to help you, or to help me at least. And I hope you too, and the reader, to learn about themselves. Death is a very big subject, and it's not something we can just sum up neatly in a word or two and have it all figured out, right? It shifts and changes. And, a lot of the exercises I try to put in the book, and again, I'm so happy you keep using the word fun. I find them fun too, are like, just trying to say what does death look like? Is it a girl or a boy? Does it, what color hair does it, just trying to concretize this thing that's so amorphous. And I think that really helps with fear too. Like if you can physically see it and understand it and start. So that's really what I'm trying to do in this book, is help people to take something maybe they haven't thought of in their whole life, or maybe they're avoiding thinking of because they're so afraid of it. And I think that's where a lot of our issues with it come. But if you can look it in the eye and start to playfully make a relationship with it. And in this, throughout the book, I draw on um cultures around the world from today and many years ago that have had relationships with death, and thinking about all of these gods of death that people had, right? And how does this work psychologically if we look at it through our rational minds? Like, it allows you to bridge and create a relationship with what we would consider a purely abstract notion. But when it's a god or a goddess or a figure in your mind, then you can start to make a relationship with it. You can talk to it. You can put it on your altar. It's not so scary anymore. I think the thing that makes it scary is we're not looking at it. And so it's this big thing that's over our shoulder. We don't even know what it is. And so a lot of the book too is about trying to help people through a lot of exercises really break down, well, if you're afraid of death, what are you afraid of exactly? Are you afraid of dying? Are you afraid of getting old and sick? You know, like, again, the more you can name it, the more you can diffuse, I think, the fear. It doesn't mean there's not still fear there,
Oh yeah.
but that's that fear that comes from the unknown and the running away of it, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. It's funny because the explanation you were giving about the airplane immediately made me think of another friend of mine that said every time she flies, she updates her will.
I
Or
do that too.
and she's also a death doula, and I'm not going to name her. She wants me to. I'll tag her later, but she does that when she flies. She updates her will, and I'm like, that's a yeah, okay, I can get that. I understand that. And then also, what you were saying about giving death a name or thinking about gods in other cultures. I am a Santa Muerte devotee. So for me, it's there's constant devotion involved in my death work, where I'm, I have altars all over my house and for different reasons, but just that intention of tending to altars or intending to Santa Muerte's altar for me is a way to be mindful about my time here and my intention and what I want out of each day. Any sort of witchcraft that is practiced is intention that I'm putting into my life, and really just thinking like, what is the most I can get out of my day, and what are the best practices I can put into my life today. And I think that people that work in the death space and people that are constantly talking about death and dying and around it, we just do that. Yeah, I think it's just, even if you aren't, into the occult arts or, any practices like that, you're still thinking about it on a daily basis. You're still looking it in the eye on a daily basis. And then there's that way of like processing how am I going to make peace with this? Um, they are here today. I am not. I am here caregiving for them today. Someday I will be there and someone will be caregiving for me. So in my way, that's how I'm able to contemplate death in those spaces. But to give people outside of the death and grief spaces ways to contemplate their own mortality, I think is so important, because people don't really realize what they're missing until they do it. When you are able to acknowledge that death is inevitable and it's going to happen to all of us, you are able to look at your life and go, okay, what next? How can I make the most of this? And I think that this book is really just such an important tool, to share with other people that are like, how do I even begin talking about this or thinking about this? I'm like, there you go. So thank
As
you so
I said, that makes me very happy. And I've heard this from a few death doulas, and honestly, that is the highest honor I could possibly have is, or people saying, can I lead a workshop on this? I say, yes, lead a workshop. Like I teach a class through Morbid Anatomy on the book. I think it is useful to have a group or a person you're doing it with. I think it really helps. So I'm all for people using it. And so I'm just very pleased, Lauren. Thank you. And I did interview a lot of death doulas in my community. Um, when I was crafting it as well, asking them what they would want people to know. And there, I include that in there. I would say too, the other big thing that brought death into my life is that I was very close with my grandparents growing up, my Oma and Opa. I spent summers with them, and they were almost like my parents, and they were Holocaust survivors. So, they were not, and they were doctors. Both of them had studied to be medical doctors. So they were not, and they were European. So they weren't squeamish about the body, about nudity, about being hurt. They were just like, you're fine. Get up. They were not very US about it. And I think, yeah, for a lot of Jews, death is a lot closer as a part of our tradition and history than it is for a lot of non-Jews. So like my grandfather lost his entire family in the Holocaust. They have no money because, I mean, it just did. I don't even feel emotional about it. It's just like that was their lives. And it's also, I think, when you're a little kid and you're pondering that, they didn't talk about the death aspect when I was a kid. But what my grandmother did tell me she told me a story that I thought about a lot as a little kid, which is that after Hitler's troops came to Austria, her best friend refused to acknowledge her on the street. And that, as a little kid, I just thought about it all the time, chewing on that all the time. And I think what death really does is it reminds you, in a way, that the sun might not rise tomorrow as we all expect it will. So I think it almost is like death. It's like we just assume that the world that we live in will be here, but it wasn't for them. Things disappeared, they couldn't work anymore, and then ultimately their people were killed. And I think it's useful to know that and to be close to that, even though it is, of course, it's sad, but it's realistic too. And I think in the United States, we tend not to want to be very realistic about things that are sad or scary or dark. And I think that's why so many of us are attracted to it. And going back to what you were saying about creativity, Lauren, like I drew a lot in this book on the work of Carl Jung, who I do Jungian analysis, and I'm a huge proponent of Jungian thought. I think it's such a useful path. He provides a bridge to a lot of different wisdom traditions, and he has this concept of the shadow, right? So basically the thing in ourselves or our culture that gets repressed and pushed down and not looked at and thus becomes monstrous, and we project it outward onto others. And what he said that I think is really interesting and appropriate here is that artists, and that's a creatives of all sorts. This could even be someone who's living a creative life just as living it. It doesn't need to be an artist, but we're instinctively drawn to the shadow part of our culture because we're trying to create balance and wholeness. And going back to what you're saying about Santa Muerta, that's why I end with Santa Muerta. So I'm also a devotee. I don't know if I'm a devotee, but I love her very much. And I have many things devoted to her. Um, and she's such an incredible brand new, very new symbol that has emerged from I would say, from the collective unconscious, like not anyone planning, but it was like the symbol people needed now was a very beneficent, beautiful woman. Do you have an image of her that you can hold up? I don't have one near me. I'm not in the right, or Nicole does. There you go. There you go.
Hey,
I
she's
guess we're all
there.
devotees.
She's up. I have a few statues of her up there, but it's out of my reach.
Yeah, that's okay. I do it in the other room too. But I think she's so talk about creativity, talk about beauty, talk about devotion. Like it's all there. And the fact that, she started as a Mexican folk saint, but now is venerated all over the world. I've seen her in exhibits in the Netherlands. I've seen her in shops in England. Of course, she's all over New York City, California,
Yeah.
Mexico. I saw her in Bolivia. She makes her way around. But I think that's because she speaks to something, an imbalance in our culture that we need, which is to create a relationship with a positive death, a beneficent death.
Yeah, and I mean, so she had called to me like most of my life. I've always been attracted to esoteric and occult, and just ever since a little kid, I was a little kid, I just loved reading books on anything I could get my hands on
Me too.
religion, spirituality, and occultism. And however, I was raised Catholic. My family is Mexican American, and so there were a lot of mixed feelings about working with her. A lot of my family was not interested in having her around because there are very mixed feelings about her, as far as like because she'll work with anyone, and she's kind of like you know um,
Mhm.
yeah. And so it took me a really long time to start working with her. And once I did, I realized like how much she's full of love and like just takes everyone under her wings as her children.
Yeah,
She loves animals. I mean, there's so many wonderful things about her, but growing up in a Mexican Catholic family, you learn that, oh, she's bad, or you have those family
yeah,
members that actually do work with her. And so it was kind of both for me. My tia growing up was a witch, and she's actually who I started practicing with when I was younger. And I always felt this calling from Santa Muerte. And when I finally did start working with her, it was just a few years ago when I entered the death space, and it just really felt like I needed that. I needed that like hug from her to keep me safe in that space and to remind me that, hey, you know what, this is overwhelming sometimes, but I'm here and I'm protecting you, and you keep my altar up, you put fresh food, you put fresh coffee, you put tobacco on my altar. And so, I'm going to be here to show you that I appreciate you as well. And I think that, long story short, having a relationship with a deity or a god, or just having a face or a name to something besides death, a different way of looking at death, or putting a person, or a face to death, does help a lot with making friends, getting comfortable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
um okay, so we're still doing good on time. I love this. We had technical difficulties in the beginning, but we're still all good. Okay, kind of an interest. There's so many death questions I could ask you, but I'm trying to keep it around the book.
That's okay. You ask whatever you like, Lauren.
I will. I'll ask a few more. If you could create your own afterlife or death world, what would it look like? If you had the choice to say, like, I'm going to create my own world of
Yeah,
death. I die. This is where I'm going.
yeah.
Uh, what would that look like?
Yeah, I think that's one of the activities in the book too, and it's a good one. Um, it's definitely a place of abundance, which is something I have to say comes from my lived experience as well. And I think it's so interesting that you're Mexican American, Lauren. Um, I went on a trip to Mayan ruins with when my father was visiting. We hired a guide to take us, and he was amazing. He was and I think he was an anthropologist, and he'd done translations of Mayan, and he was really researching up to the very last minute. But anyway, we went to a Mayan ruin, and he said, there's a door we can go into this chamber. They don't know exactly what it was, but there's nine of them. So they think it had something to do with the underworld, because the Mayan underworld had 9 levels. Um, if I'm remembering that correctly, they think it was an initiation chamber for a shaman, but they don't really know. Do you guys want to go? And I was like, oh, I don't know. It sounds kind of scary. And, but then I realized I did want to go, but it was scary. And we went down into the room of this Mayan ruin, and we went through a room literally that had like a snake skin hanging on the wall. There were bats. There were these black butterflies of death that you see down here all the time. They were all in there. And then we got to the last room, going down, 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 down. And he turned out the light, and we stood there. And I felt into it. And I was with my husband, we both did. We both could close our eyes and felt into, what does it feel like? What does death feel like, And it felt warm, and it felt fertile. And I think that's what we've lost with the Judeo-Christian view of death. Like I'm doing a lot of research into this now for my new book, and I'm doing a lot of research into how the Catholics, sorry, when they were colonizing a new place, part of their MO would be to find a god that was as close to evil as they could find, and call it the devil. And what's interesting is there was no evil gods anywhere. This is a Judeo-Christian and Zoroastrian concept. This didn't exist in Mexico before the Christians arrived. There was no evil figure. But what they would often do is pick a god of the dead and demonize that. And in the same way, if you think about it, hell is the underworld. But in the old days, it was a place of transformation, a place where you bury the seed and it's reborn. It's this idea of cycles of life, death, and rebirth. But when we lose that, I think that's where so much of our fear of death comes from. So that's a very long way of saying my understanding and my belief is that it's something generative, it's something fertile, it's something warm and motherly. That's what it feels like to me.
I agree with you. I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting because there's things that I can relate to in what you said. When I do shamanic journeys, I go down into the earth. And to me, that's the most comfortable place, is to be like in the mud, in the wet, dark earth. And I think that is like death. I think that is like a safe space, is like being in the earth, becoming one with the earth.
Yeah.
But also what you were saying about death being this warm, like loving, like motherly. I've explained to a few people before that I'm energetically sensitive, and that is the main reason why I took Michaela McKellen's Reiki, because I want to learn how to do Reiki in grief and death spaces.
That's
And
great.
people like energy, the concept of energy is created, doesn't die. I believe that to be true as well, because working in the death space, I have told many people that the energy that comes from people that have died is like the purest, most calmest, most warmest energy I have ever felt. It is so calm, it is so big. It's not something that you feel when you're around someone that's alive,
Mm,
because somehow it's just everywhere. Like once it leaves the body, and I believe it goes back into the collective conscious. It becomes part of something bigger, and that's why it feels bigger. That's why it feels
mm,
calm. Why it feels
right.
warmer.
Yeah.
Um, but also, I am not a practicing Catholic, so don't worry. I'm a reformed, recovering Catholic. So,
I
but I
get that.
I did quite enjoy all the stories growing up, and honestly, I think that's a lot of what got me into sci-fi to begin with.
I
Was
see that.
I was like, wow, this is so cool. People turned into salt. I want to read more books like this, and so
Mm.
yeah, that was my gateway drug into science fiction obsession. But I definitely have you heard that there's an exhibit currently? I don't know if this would interest you in what you're currently writing about, or if you'll be back here before then. But there's an exhibit at the Met Cloisters right now on gods in other cultures,
Oh,
mythical gods in other cultures. And I
it's
was
cool.
like,
I would love to see that.
yeah, I think it just came out like a couple of weeks ago, if I
Okay.
remember correctly. But anyway, that came to my mind, so I wanted to get it out. So,
Yeah, thank you.
and um,
And let me say, I also think Catholics make the best art, and they've given so much good to the world. I'm not just talking smack about the Catholics. Yeah, I think most of my friends are Catholic, and I'm not a Catholic hater at all. Just watching what they did as colonizers,
yeah,
that's my pro.
well, right, well, because then I was also thinking about Santa Muerte and her origins. She was a different type of god before she was, part of the colonization and became like a saint, well, not a saint, but like she changed,
Yeah,
so yeah. And also, like, have you ever seen reliquaries? Like,
I
come on.
love reliquaries. Yeah, they're like the best thing ever. I mean, so much of Catholic art is the best ever. I mean, come on. The
Yeah,
Sacred Heart. There's so much.
yeah, and it's a lot of what influences like what I'm attracted to aesthetically now. Just growing up with it,
Same,
I still
same.
it, even though I'm
I
not.
I have a Sacred Heart right here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Uh, And I'm not Catholic, but I love it.
No, it's so beautiful. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. What was the other question I was gonna ask? Oh, um, if you died and you could bring anything with you
Mm.
into your death world, that you're going into after you die, it could be anything. It could be a memory, a person, a pet. Not that you would willingly want to bring someone that's alive in, but I'm not judging. Also, like art or a food or just anything.
That's
Do
a
you have,
great question. My first thought, though, maybe this goes against what we're supposed to say, but is everything I've accrued in this life. Like my knowledge, my wisdom, all of the aha moments. Like I think that's probably what I prize the most. Like all of that, not knowledge, not facts, but embodied knowing. You know what I mean?
yeah.
The realizations, the real realizations that I've learned the hard way, or
Yeah.
through experience, not through books.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to think about, because I have this idea that we go back into this collective, pool, and um, then what happens with our thoughts? What happens with our memories? And that's the thing that scares me the most about dying, is like forgetting. Forgetting I have children, forgetting I have a husband, forgetting my friends, forgetting my memories, my pets.
Totally, totally. You know what it reminds me of the way you're talking about, Lauren? Have you seen Blade Runner? Have you guys seen Blade Runner? Remember the scene where Rutger Hauer's dying and he says memories are lost like tears in rain?
Time
You
to not.
know? Yeah. Which do you know he ad-libbed that on the spot? That was not in the original script. I just read that recently. Isn't that incredible? But
Wow.
that's the human condition, right? Like all of these things are so precious that we've gathered. And then from what I've read and near death experiences, it does seem to suggest that we do lose that. Um, but yeah, I know what you mean. But I think we don't care then is the thing, and that's if you've I don't know if either of you have read Carl Jung's near death experience. That's the one I've read the most closely. So he had a heart attack when he was like 64. And he said he could feel like all of his memories kind of sloughed off and that it was painful. But then once it was gone, he didn't care anymore, So I think it's that we have this attachment. And once that attachment, it kind of reminds me of my grandmother too. My grandmother, my Oma, the one I was talking about earlier, when she was older, like in her 90s, and she couldn't read as well, and her husband that she'd known since she was 19 had died. She would say to me all the time, like, I just want to die already. It wasn't like more, and she's like, I can't say that to anyone but you. But that's, she called me her father confessor. The Jewish lady called me her father confessor. But I think what I love about that is it gave me the knowledge, even though right now there's nothing in me that wants to die, that there's a moment when we do, in the natural turn of events. And isn't that kind of beautiful too? There's a moment when, and I've seen other people since then, that it is part of a cycle where right now, of course, we're like, oh my God, I want this, I want that. But maybe that kind of disappears, I'm watching my mom get rid of all the stuff in her house. And I think it's the same kind of preparing. So if we live long enough and healthy enough, then hopefully we'll get to a point where we can give those things up willingly.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely would recommend getting rid of things as you feel you need to, because that's one of the biggest problems with people inheriting a parent who has died. They
Totally.
all their stuff, and then they don't want to get rid of any of it because it has sentimental value, and that can be so hard on someone that's already going through grief and
Totally.
um, all the other stuff that comes along with the death. So yeah, I think that my biggest attachment to would be to my thoughts, my memories, my people, my pets, and I don't have my stuff. I mean, it can just all disappear when I die, and that's fine.
I feel the same about that.
Yeah. um, I guess we have got a little bit of time left. I would love to talk about anything upcoming that you have. If you want to talk about any like thing that you're writing that you want to share, or
Yeah.
project classes, or anything like that that's coming up.
Yeah, I'm working on a book. I'm not supposed to talk about it too much yet, but I can say I think that it's exploring different ways of looking at opposites, especially good and evil, and kind of rethinking our assumptions about that we have from being part of a Judeo-Christian world, which is inspired by my travels in Mexico and in Latin America and also in India. I just recently got back from 2.5 months in India, which was really, really powerfully life-changing. And talk about death, right? We went to Varanasi on that trip. And I don't know if you've been or know of Varanasi, but Varanasi is where people go to die in India. A lot of people choose to die there. It's really interesting, actually, because the thought is that um, your body, your soul can kind of get out of the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. And that's another very interesting thing about India. We think of reincarnation as really great, right? Like, oh my God, it gives us, that's not how people there think of it. And I know this from talking to people and also from reading, they think of it more like re-dying, and they mostly want to get out of that cycle. That's the goal, is not to live and to be absorbed back into the oneness like you were talking about, Lauren. But in this town of Varanasi, and I'll write about this in the book in some way, but bodies are being burned 24/7 on these cremation pyres right on the Ganges. And at first, my husband is a death doula as well, just sat there enthralled, and couldn't stop watching. Just it's so riveting. It's endless. And there's families. It's not a mournful experience. There's people taking selfies. There's tourists going by. There's balloon salesmen. It's very prosaic. And I'd say, but 2 weeks in to our 1 month stay, we weren't riveted anymore. It didn't have that charge, which really just showed me how unique the way we fear death is in the West, I think, which really has to do with the fact that we don't encounter it in daily life, I think, because it really changed. Um, anyway, this book will definitely um, uh, be responding to some things that I learned there through embodied experience. That, and also I'll be talking a lot about Kali, who's my goddess of choice these days. I can show you an image of her that I bought while I was in India. Can you see her?
Ooh, I love it.
Do you see her little head dangling on a string? She's so great. Um, but she's going to be she to me is this thing. I mean, where Santa Muerta is amazing. And I love Santa Muerta. I will always love Santa Muerta. Kali is almost crazier iconographically. And to me, both Santa Muerta and Kali have forced me to expand my mind to understand what I'm seeing, because I see something and that's not what the people like. For Santa Muerta, when I first saw her, and maybe you guys too, I don't know, I was just like, oh my God, what is this? It's so absurd and gruesome. And but you see these people who love her so much. And I feel like for me, those experiences are always an invitation to say, what am I not understanding? What preconceived notions do I have that aren't letting me see how these people are seeing it? And so Kali to me is even more of a Zen koan to our Western mind than Santa Muerta. Like it's almost impossible to understand her. And she's everywhere. The way that Santa Muerta is usually in disenfranchised neighborhoods, right? Or you have to look for her in a cult store. She's not going to be at your local Catholic store, right?
Yeah.
Kali is everywhere. She's for sale in every store. She's in rich areas and poor areas. She's in the most historic temples, and she's in little roadside shrines. I saw a giant, like 3-story Kali statue in this neighborhood that we just happened to. And I thought it was a hallucination almost. I made the card back up, and I was like, maybe I just imagined, and then we found it. It really was there. But this is to me the Zen koan I'm really working on now is how to understand something so different than how we think about things. Death is a part of it. It's not just death, but it goes into this whole idea of non-duality, which of course is the Indian idea that these oppositions are just illusions, of being in a body essentially. So that's a very long way of saying that's what I'm really thinking about now. And here's like my stacks of books of what I'm dealing with. Here's my Saraswati because she's helping me organize. That's where I need to be right now is organizing all this material. Here's a bunch more of the books that I'm looking at. This one as well. So there we go.
Okay. It's like, oh,
Sorry about that.
we are book twins. This
Yeah.
this is my stack.
And you got the skull on top. That's really nice.
Stacks,
Oh yes, yes,
stacks and stacks. That's just
yeah. And we have a big bookshelf too. So
yeah. That's just what I'm currently finished with and like saving. And
I'm
so, oh, did we lose her?
not sure what happened. I think maybe we lost her. You could maybe invite her again. That's weird. Maybe she accidentally pushed something. That's okay. We'll be right back in action.
Was
Let's
it
see.
fault? Did I touch something? Probably.
Maybe it was the spirits. See, she just texted me.
It was Santa Muerte. She's like, let's talk about books. Talk about me.
I know. She said she just texted me saying lost you. Do you want to try to invite her one more time?
I did, but I'll try it one more time.
Okay.
Okay. I would at least like to say goodbye.
Yeah. Which we can totally do without, but maybe we can with. We just
I did invite her again. I'm not sure if she got it.
let me text her. Sorry, guys, we just lost our guest. She should be right back. But that's what happens when you talk about death, I guess. Spooky things happen, right?
It's saying that she's unable to join.
Oh, okay.
Um, okay. Well,
Weird. That's okay. I don't.
one more time. And if she's not able to join,
Let's see. I just told her you tried again. Thanks for waiting, guys. We were just going to try to close out. Oh, hi, Joanna. She's in the chat.
okay. Joanna, I'm not sure what happened, but I've tried to add you again. So if you're unable to join, it's okay. It's okay. Um, we would have only had a few minutes left anyway, but I'm so grateful that you came and you had this discussion with me. Unfortunately, we don't get to do the ending portion where we can, talk and say goodbye, but we can do that in the chat. And I will also tag you as a collaborator. Let me see if I can do it one more time.
Oh, she said she sent a request too. I don't know.
Okay. I just sent an invite again. And yeah, it's saying she's unable to join again. It's okay, Joanna. We only have a few minutes left, but like I was saying, I'm going to add you as a collaborator with Morbid. I can add all three. Oh,
She coming back.
no.
That's okay.
Okay. Well, listen, um, Joanna, I really appreciate you coming and talking to me about your book. It's fantastic. If you haven't checked out her book yet, please do. It's wonderful. If you've never thought about your death but have wondered how you could start contemplating your mortality, this is a great way, I think, for you to do that. It's a really awesome book. It's very detailed. There's a lot of fun exercises in it. I know that she loves it. I keep using that word fun, but it's true. It is fun. It's a great book, and I really enjoyed reading it. And I will probably read it and go through the exercises again. Um, let's see, Nicole,
Yes.
is there
Um,
anything that you wanted to comment on? Oh, and by the way, I will tag both accounts so that you have the opportunity to share to each page if Joanna wants to, and if you want to add Morbid whenever you're able to. But also, Joanna, anything that you want to add, you can add in the comments too at the end.
Oh, I think I'm back.
Yay!
I don't know what happened, but this time it came through. And that maybe Nicole had to leave because now Nicole's gone. I don't know.
Okay, well,
Sorry
listen,
about that. Very dramatic.
I know this whole thing is you know what? It's fine. It's an Instagram live, and that's the way it goes. Sometimes we have no control over it, and there's no use stressing over what we can't control, right?
Totally. It's been fun, and if that was it, that was it. But I'm so glad I got to be here, and it's been such a delight. And thank you so much for inviting me, Lauren. It means a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed picking your brain and talking about death and getting some further perspective on your book and how it came to be. So, like I said, everybody, if you haven't checked out her book, please do. It's wonderful. Highly recommend.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Yeah, and I hope you have a good rest of your night. And I will tag you and I will add a caption. Anything that you feel like adding underneath it, please do.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming. And thank you so much
Bye.
for having me, Lauren.
Yes, have a good rest of your night.
Bye.